Diamond B Sports presents the American Sports Cavalcade with your host, the Tennessee Cowboy, Ed Bruce, and Brock Yates and Steve Evans. The American Sports Cavalcade.
A year ago, the site National Trail Raceway in Columbus, Ohio, where three former world champions of drag racing stepped to the forefront to renew their stake on the claim of champion. Pro stock great Bob Glidden, funny car driver Raymond Beadle, and top fueler Richard Tharp all scored impressive victories and a needed shot in the arm for the 1983 season. These victories underscored the dramatic competition that we've come to expect from the Spring Nationals. Hi, I'm Ed Bruce, and welcome to the 20th Annual Spring Nationals of Drag Racing. The fans here in Columbus have come to expect over the years a lot of tremendous action in fast racing, and this year they're expecting more of the same, and so are we. Brock Yates and Steve Evans are set to call all the action for you, and from time to time we'll bring you highlights from last year's racing. But right now Brock and Steve are down at the track, so let's go to them.
Well, Ed, it may not be the wing of a B1 or the Concorde, but by drag racing standards, it's mighty impressive. And without the downforce of that airfoil, and even with these great big tires, there's no way a top fuel dragster would get any traction in the quarter of a mile at 260 miles an hour. They just have that much horsepower. Some people say 3,000. Qualifying so far has been pretty close to form. Gary Beck, the world record holder, is number one. Joe Amato is arch rival for the world championship, number two. But if you want a little bit of a dark horse, don't forget Gary Ormsby from California. He's been the number one qualifier at the past two races and won the opening race of the year, the Winter Nationals. This could be a good bet. Shirley Muldowney is in the 8th spot, still in the top half of the field. Her crew frantically trying to find a 10th or 10th and a half to run with the guys like Ormsby, Beck, and Amato. The other classes of competition today? Well, let's join Brock Yates and have a look.
Thanks, Steve. I know they're on a roll in top fuel, but let's not forget this iron. The funny cars. This one belongs to Frank Hawley, the reigning world champion. He's had some problems earlier in the season, but he may be on a roll here at Columbus. And the Snake, Don Prudhomme, he's had some problems as well, but he's running strong here. And so is another old pro, Raymond Beadle. The pro stocks, Bob Glidden, who can forget him? 5 victories in a row here at the Spring Nationals. He's running very strong. Lee Shepard, always a winner. He's the world champion. And Warren Johnson has got top speed here at the meet. So the pro stock competition, wild and woolly as always. The funny cars, who can predict? But we got 3 great veterans in the competition.
Well, Brock, as everyone could probably tell by my appearance, it is hot in Columbus. And this kind of heat can make for a very tricky racing surface and is also very hard on the equipment. Gary Beck was a recipient, actually, of top fuel attrition when in round number 1 earlier, he got a bye run, a single and automatic win by virtue of being the low qualifier at 5.52 seconds. Of course, Beck, the reigning world champion this season, the quickest driver in the world at 5.39 seconds. He has all the credentials.
He sure does, and he just drives a top fuel dragster like an absolute pro. Straight as a string, incredibly consistent, Gary Beck is, Steve.
That was a 5.63 at 255 miles an hour. Of course, Beck running all out, shooting for lane choice. And in funny car eliminator, Billy Meyer of Waco, Texas, who has won the last 2 events on the circuit. We saw him win the Cajun Nationals, went up against John Force of Fullerton, California. And Force had a bit of a surprise here for Billy Meyer.
He sure did, because John Force was definitely the underdog in this particular race, but Force just drove by Billy Meyer in the last half of track and took a victory at 6:06, 242 miles an hour. A fine victory. Steve talked to him about it.
Anytime you can get around the hottest car on the circuit, the number 1 qualifier, Billy Meyer, John Force, you got to be awfully pleased.
Tell you, we did it at Pomona. We got around Bernstein, number 1 qualifier. We did it at Gainesville, and then Baton Rouge. I started getting that red light syndrome deal, and enough that it even changed my car. Last week at Bristol, the car wasn't running right. I found out that I was driving into the car and making it run different. The ETs fell way off. I told Frazier, I'm going back to beating that throttle. If I give him a red light, I'll take the embarrassment. It paid off here.
It certainly did in big. Going into round 2 is John Force.
But the surprises weren't over. This was Kenny Bernstein. Remember him, 260 miles an hour, the absolute funny car top speed record at the Gator Nationals. He came to the Spring Nationals loaded for bear. But it wasn't to be because he faced Germ Gunn, Azusa, California. Again, a decided underdog, Steve.
Well, Sherm Gunn has been racing for years. In fact, this car in the near lane is 6 years old, but this is the first season he's gone out and run the entire NHRA National Event Circuit. And that experience paid off for Sherm, as Kenny Bernstein lost traction right off the starting line, battling for control, but to no avail as Sherm Gunn wins it at 6:14. Later, I talked to Kenny in the pits about the tire smoke.
You try as a driver very hard. You anticipate and you know it's coming, but sometimes even as much as you prepared yourself and you think it might happen, you can't catch it, and I couldn't keep up with it there. We just got a little problem we got to work out.
Sometimes when you feel them come loose, you can short shift it or shift early and it'll help.
Yeah, sometimes you can do that, or you can pedal it, come off the throttle all the way back on, but it's so quick and so fast that it's really difficult to do. I thought about it then, but by the time you thought, it's over with. It's too late.
So now the smoke is cleared at Columbus, and we're ready for the second round of Top Fuel Dragsters. Stay with us.
And nothing seems to bother the Greek, as they call Chris Karamessinis, Brock. I've seen him on fire. I've seen him ground loop a Top Fuel Dragster upside down, and he'll come out and say, "Hey, how you doing today?" Nothing bothers the man. And some of his most thrilling moments came at the old drag strip in Bakersfield, California in the late 50s, early 60s. In the grandstands then was a very young Doug Krahulis. In the staging lanes just before this race, I asked Doug, what's it feel like to race one of your heroes?
Well, Doug, when you were about 12 years old, dreaming of being a pro drag racer, no one would have convinced you then someday you'd be racing a legend, the Greek.
Oh, you're not kidding. Well, he's definitely a good friend of ours. And I've been over there trying to rag on him pretty hard, trying to get him to mess up, but he's been driving too long, so it's going to be one of those Joe Amato, Dick LaHaye races, I'm sure.
By that you mean very close.
Very, very close. We stepped on the engine a little bit, and I'm sure Chris did too.
Well, it's going to be an interesting race, as Doug says. In the near lane is Krahulis. That is Chris, the Greek Karamessinis, in that beautiful blue and pearlescent dragster, Steve.
And he loves to gold plate everything he possibly can. That's been the Greek's trademark for a long, long time. The captain of the Greek fleet out of Chicago, Illinois. Some kind of drag racing legend. Krahulis in the near lane, they leave right together. Krahulis with a bit of an edge, and something breaks in Karamessinis' car. Doug Krahulis wins the race. The wing has broken off of Doug Krahulis' car. The parachute is wrapped around the wing, and this is a very short racetrack. Doug Krahulis headed for the catch net, and he just drills the bullseye on the net. Actually, it's a pair of nets, aircraft carrier style, that have gathered up Doug Krahulis' 150-mile-an-hour race car.
Well, Steve, these cars are made to go, not to stop. They have only two-wheel brakes on the back, and of course that parachute to slow them down. As we saw, Doug did not have his parachute because of this broken wing. And here at Columbus, that was big, big trouble right from the start. As you can see, the race car has crossed the line somewhere in the range of 250 miles an hour, and down comes the wing and immediately snags the parachute, and then he's in big trouble.
Well, at 250 miles an hour, there's about 200 pounds of downforce on that wing, and apparently some component in the wing support structure broke, and as you can see, the parachute wrapped right around it. Now, Doug Krahulis did exactly what you're supposed to do. Keep the car from bouncing on the tires and aim right at that target. It takes a lot of courage to do it, and he did it brilliantly.
He certainly did. As you can see, there's a steel guardrail beyond that. The catch fence did its job to perfection, but we hope that Doug got out of that crash all right.
Well, Doug Krahulis right now has been put into the ambulance here at National Trail and is getting medical attention from NHRA Safety Safari paramedics.
As near as we can see, the integrity of the race car, the roll cage, and the rest of the safety equipment worked. That Doug was well packaged in the race car. As we see it, another impact, and the catch fence there pulls the car to an immediate halt. But of course, there were massive G-forces at work in that crash.
Well, Brock, the only information we have so far as to the condition of Doug Krahulis is that he is unconscious and obviously being transported to the hospital, and we'll relay any further information as it comes to us.
Well, he's a very strong and physically fit young man, so we can only hope he's going to be all right. As we go back down to the starting line, here is yet another of the great drag racing legends getting ready to go, Connie Coletta.
And as Connie slips on his fireproof gloves, he has got to be thinking back to his very close shave. Also, an encounter with the net at the end of Columbus. Now, you see what happens if they get to bouncing on those great big balloon-like tires, Brock. That could be a problem in itself, but Coletta takes it right into the net at a much slower speed, however, than Doug Krahulis was going. And minor damage, really, to the race car. They put a new front end on it, and we're back here for the second round.
And there goes the engine, the electric starter hooked up to the blower drive that kicks over that monster 500 cubic inch nitro burning V8 engine behind Connie Coletta.
And he better have a lot of nitro in the tank, because his competition here in round number 2, the low qualifier, the world champion, Gary Beck of Hemet, California.
Well, we said earlier that Beck has won about everything there is to win in this sport, in addition to shattering records virtually every place he runs.
Now, by virtue of his 5.63 on that bye run we saw in the first round, Gary Beck has lane choice. He has selected that far lane, Brock, that he's burning out in right now. But according to the drivers I've talked to, they really, at this point anyway, see no imbalance in the lanes.
Well, let's not forget, though, Steve, that lane that Gary Beck is in is the one we saw Kenny Bernstein go up and smoke in a little bit earlier. So it's possible, and especially when you got 3,000 horsepower to play with.
Well, the consensus on Bernstein was just too much too soon. Look how fast Gary Beck backs up, wanting to keep those tires from cooling off, Brock.
He does everything according to a plan. He's so exact in the way he goes racing.
Well, he is the total drag racer, driver, engineer, you name it, Beck can do it. Much like Connie Coletta, he has done it all in the sport of drag racing, from Ypsilanti, Michigan, where he operates a professional flying service. Gary Beck recently moved from El Toro to Hemet, California, to be closer to the race car shop owned by Larry Miner, the team captain.
And a very effective one as well, a man that also handles the Top Fuel car pretty well in his second season.
And you just saw the second burnout of Gary Beck, which is now part of that starting line ritual. First, the long smoky burnout to lay down some rubber to heat up the tires, the track. Then that second burnout, which gives the driver some indication of starting line conditions. Connie Coletta adjusting his gear in the cockpit. He's ready. Gary Beck is ready. This could be a good one.
It sure could. A couple of seasoned professionals. You can't fault these guys for inexperience, that's for sure, as Coletta slides up against that electronically controlled Christmas tree.
Coletta tried to pull a hole shot, but the Christmas tree caught him in the act. A red light on the tree for Coletta. He is disqualified. Doesn't matter anyway. Gary Beck at 5.69, 245 miles an hour wins it.
Well, a 5.69 is a relatively routine time for Gary Beck. 99% of the other Top Fuel drivers would consider it a near record run. Let's take a look one more time at Connie Coletta squeezing that light, clicking on the red, and putting him away for the afternoon. Gary Beck goes on to an easy victory here at Columbus.
Well, anytime you race Gary Beck, you better try to get off the starting line first. Connie Coletta tried to do that and ended up with the foul start. The electronic system caught him, Gary, and you've won it at 5.69.
Yeah, well, we're trying to hang on to the track. You know, it's a little tricky and trying to be careful, trying to stay out of that net. So, but it's, no, it's fortunate. Coletta leaves early. I'm sure he was trying to cut it real fine.
You see you're trying to get a hold of the track. Are you running safe? Is that what you're saying? You back up a little bit?
We've been real careful with the clutch. We're trying to keep the power in to be able to get an ET, but we're being real careful with what we do with the clutch.
Okay, so being very cautious and wisely so. Gary Beck goes into the semifinals.
And the quiet man from Hemet, California establishes himself as the man to beat here at Columbus. More Top Fuel racing on its way.
It's standing room only here at National Trail Raceway in Columbus, Ohio. The next pair of Top Fuel dragsters are just about ready to start. But first, let's check in with Ed Bruce for some history on this event.
Last year's Top Fuel final was more than just another exciting race. It was a matchup of two former world champions, both with something to prove in 1983. Let's take a look back at last year's Fuel final between Richard Tharp and Shirley Muldowney. Shirley Muldowney in the far lane has had tremendous success here at National Trail Raceway, winning the Top Fuel title in 1976, 77, 80, and 82. She'd been running very well all day. Richard Tharp in the near lane exploded an engine on an earlier run and had to put in a new power plant to make this run. At the start, both cars are together, but Shirley lost some traction and Tharp was ahead. Then Tharp exploded his engine, and Shirley, trying to catch up, came up a little short. Richard Tharp won an incredibly close race. In slow motion, we see that when Shirley's car lost traction, Richard pulled out to a big lead. Then he blew his second engine and was literally coasting toward the finish line. Shirley came on strong, but Tharp had just enough momentum to carry him home for the win. A great race for the Top Fuel final.
Well, hopefully we'll lead to something like that as a conclusion here this year as a couple of more Top Fuel dragsters fire up in the staging lane. Steve Evans, this is Bob Simmons, a man not quite as well known as some of the other contestants.
But a dedicated drag racer, Brock. It has been Simmons' lifelong dream to race this kind of competition, the Becks and the Amatos and the Ormsbys, and here he is for the very first time doing it.
Well, he may very well have run up against Joe Amato, his rival in this race, before. They're both a couple of Easterners and run a lot of NHRA events along the East Coast.
And interestingly enough, Simmons' car in the near lane is equipped with a Donovan power plant. Now, that was the first of the aftermarket drag racing engines, and the only one you'll find in this field. Simmons' car called the New Englander. He's proud of his Eastern heritage, and so is this man, the world's fastest drag racer. Joe Amato set the record at the Gator Nationals at 262 miles an hour, partially due to that great big wing you see. He invented that style of wing, and his wife, Jerry, is always on the starting line checking things out and backing up her husband.
Well, if it's Bob Simmons' goal to squeeze his way into the big time at Top Fuel drag racing, here is his opportunity. His rival, Joe Amato, the quickest in the business as we know, his chance to beat him. Well, let's hear what Bob Simmons had to say about racing Joe.
Well, we're not only tickled, we're giving it all we got. We're going to go out and do the best we can against Amato. He's the toughest guy here, but we're going to whip him.
In a lot of ways, he is the toughest. Well, what kind of a gamble do you take against Amato? The parts are expensive.
Well, I got two gambles. I'm gonna try to cut the light as hard as I can. If I red light, I red light. And I'm gonna chase him as far as I can. He may hurt something on the high end and I get a chance to drive around him, I'm gonna do it.
Well, there's the strategy, at least on paper, that you go about to beat a man like Joe Amato, but the reality may be a little bit harder to pull off than the theory, Steve.
Indeed, Brock. First, let's see if Simmons can get the whole shot that he wants so badly.
Well, it's a clean start. No red light for Simmons, but it was Amato out first, and Amato is going to win this race convincingly, as a matter of fact.
It is Joe Amato at 573, 252 miles an hour. But Simmons was game, Brock, with the old Donovan motor at 615, 223. Nothing to be ashamed of.
It sure was, and a good job for Bob Simmons, even though he did lose. All right, you recognize this lady.
Most of the racing world does. The pink cars, Shirley Muldowney, three-time Top Fuel world champion. In fact, we got a couple of real class acts here, Brock. Shirley Muldowney up against Gary Ormsby in the far lane. Ormsby won the opening race of the season. The Winter Nationals has been the low qualifier at the last two events on the circuit. He's a tough customer from Roseville, California. And in Roseville, California, Gary Ormsby has a very successful automotive dealership, kind of grew up in the car business, started out as a lot boy and worked very hard.
And of course, you know the story of Shirley Muldowney. It's been told in books and magazines and in movies. One of the great figures in this sport and something of a hero among the women's movement. She is a rags to riches story of unparalleled dimension. But right now, her only thoughts are directed toward running this racetrack and beating Gary Ormsby. So as they stage, let's go to Steve.
So Joe Amato, a nice effort, Joe, at 573.
That's pretty good, Steve. We had to change a lot of parts from the first round because the car was a little soft. We're not really hurting it. We're really working hard to try and put a little more power in to try and, use up the fuel a little bit and burn the motor up a little, make some more power.
And not smoke the tires.
And not smoke the tires yet. Did we smoke the tires then?
No, it didn't look like it.
No, it felt pretty good. It shook a lot when I put it right before I shifted it. But, that was more like a tune-up run, so I think it'll come around now because we had to change the clutch. My car never runs good when this has a fresh clutch in it. So the next run, I think it'll come around, and right now we've got her on Ormsby. The lane choice, I don't think is that critical.
You saying that Ormsby's going to beat Shirley Muldowney?
Well, he's running the best right now. That's anybody's race. I like to see both of them. I'm friends with both of them. I like to see Shirley beat him because he's closer to us in the points, but it's anybody's race, Just the best man win.
Well, let's go out and find out. But you heard Joe Amato. He's already got Ormsby advancing here.
Well, we'll see how that prediction comes out, but let's not forget this. Shirley Muldowney is very, very close friends with Doug Kerhulis, who is now on his way to the hospital, and we have to wonder whether or not she is somewhat distracted by his problems.
Shirley would be on her way to the hospital right now if it were not for her commitment to this sport and this race. Gary Ormsby is out first. Shirley Muldowney trying to gun him down, but not today. Joe Amato was right. Gary Ormsby does advance into the semifinals at 5:65, a nice elapsed time, and a good speed of 247 miles an hour.
An excellent run for Gary Ormsby. In fact, 4/100ths of a second quicker than Gary Beck's earlier ET. Let's take one more look at that. Shirley gives it the old college try, but it was Ormsby out first and driving on to a convincing victory. As we see here, as they go through the lights, it's Gary Ormsby all the way by a full car length. Steve is with Gary.
She ran a pretty good number against you. She stepped right up with a 74, but you got her in the 60s.
Yeah, she's no lightweight. She ain't easy to beat.
I know. Even now, after all these years, if she beats you, you go back to Sacramento, your old friends will still give you a hard time about it.
Oh, there's a lot of heat, Steve. A lot of heat. That lady beats you.
And especially if she leaves on you, which she didn't.
Well, that's good. But nothing's worse than getting beat by her. And it's not because she's not a good racer. It's just people don't understand. You know, she's a lady and she's a very good racer.
Oh, I'll say she is. You got another very good racer coming up next round, Joe Amato.
Yeah, we went battle several races, and he's pretty tough. But I think we're going to be ready this time, hopefully.
Okay, we'll see Gary Ormsby in the semis.
So as Gary and Shirley end this particular little encounter with a handshake and head back to the pits, let's take a look at the semifinal pairings. It will be Ormsby versus Joe Amato. Gary Beck will have a bye run because of that unfortunate accident involving Doug Krahulis. Stay with us at the Spring Nationals. We're back at the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio. Hi, I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans and Ed Bruce. We've got some funny car competition coming up, but first, Steve has rounded up some more information on Doug Krahulis, who had that unfortunate crash a few moments ago. Steve?
I'm with Ronnie Davis, the emergency medical technician on NHRA Safety Safari team. And Ronnie, how is Doug Krahulis doing?
Fine. We just got back from the hospital, and he's in fair condition. All the vitals are stable. He's breathing on his own, and he's being transferred to Riverside Hospital, which is our neurosurgical center, and got more facilities to take care of him. But at this point, everything looks pretty good for him.
Thank you.
Well, that is encouraging news about Doug Krahulis, and we hope his recovery continues as we get ready for some funny car action, and that is John Force, Steve Evans, and a real force in funny car competition at this point.
Yes, he is, but talk about a force. How about Don Prudhomme, the winningest funny car driver of all time, 4 world championships to his credit. And Brock, I feel that these are the most violent race cars in all the world of motorsports.
And the noisiest and most spectacular as well, Steve. I only wish the people at home could smell these things. They had some kind of smell-o-vision. The nitro fumes will just bring tears to your eyes.
John Force of Fullerton, California, is one of the toughest individuals, mentally and physically, that I've ever met. And this is Force's idol. Don Prudhomme, they call him the Snake. Granada Hills, California. That is a Pontiac Firebird. Well, a replica of a Pontiac Firebird.
Has won world championships in both funny cars and Top Fuel. The only man ever to do that, and one of the singly most successful race drivers in history in all kinds of motorsports.
And these cars are just a bear to drive, Brock. They shake and they rattle. They sometimes even roll. Of course, fire, the biggest danger with the engine in the front-mounted location. The only thing separating the driver from that engine is a thin aluminum firewall.
And also, Steve, don't forget, these guys don't carry either tape decks or air conditionings in these things. Don't forget John Force. He knocked off Billy Meyer, who was on a big hot streak.
And John Force, in our interview earlier, said that he'd risk a red light if that's what it took to get by the competition today.
Well, no red light, and a good start, but John Force comes to a halt early in the going, and Don Prudhomme makes a strong pass, 599, 212, to take that race. John Force broke earlier in the going, and that was the end of it for him. Unfortunate for John Force, but he is through for the day here at Columbus. As for Don Prudhomme, a 599, a pretty good ET, low top speed, 212 miles an hour. He obviously shut it off in the lights when he saw he'd won. Tom McEwen, the Mongoose, in his car, ready to go after the racetrack is clear to John Force's machine. That'll take a couple of minutes. In the meantime, Don Prudhomme is out of his car and will have a chance to reflect on his easy victory.
Well, in this sport, the wind lights make you smile, but when there's rounds to go, the 599s don't. Snake, what happened? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think so. It just fell off. We made a jet change, and the track was loose in the middle, and it used the engine up during the three-quarter mark of the course. So, it just slowed up.
All right, so Don Prudhomme goes to the semifinals, and at least he thinks he knows how to get back into that 580 track. There's still hope.
There's always hope when the Snake is on the racetrack. as he gets ready to go back and find a few more horsepower out of that big V8. In the meantime, the smoke is clearing for some burnouts between these two gentlemen, Tom McEwen and the world champion, Frank Hawley.
Frank Hawley really represents the new generation of drag racer, Brock. He's in his late 20s, and as you said, has won the world title 2 times and has worn that mantle very, very well. He's excellent with the press, goes out of his way to expose the sport of drag racing, to encourage youngsters not to street race, to do it on NHRA sanctioned drag strip. Just a fine all-around guy. And so, of course, is Tom McEwen of Fountain Valley, California. If he's not racing his funny car in the quarter of a mile, you'll find him in SoCal at Los Alamitos Racetrack racing his horses in a quarter of a mile.
It's all 1,320 feet, no matter how you cut it with McEwen. One of the real veterans and one of the best-known racing personalities in the United States. Survey after survey reveals that everybody's heard of the Mongoose.
And a very glib guy, Brock. An excellent interview. He'll often go to the timing tower and work with the PA announcer and entertain the crowd. Just a terrific guy.
Frank Hawley runs for Austin Coyle out of the Chicago area, also one of the great fixtures in drag racing. Relatively independently financed operation, Steve, as compared to some of the other high buck operations.
That's right. They exist on what they win.
And they win a lot with Frank Hawley inside that machine. Hawley, very good with the lights, generally a very consistent race driver, not prone to mistakes.
Austin Coyle has had 11 drivers in the long line of Chi-Town Hustler automobiles. He tells me that Frank is the best of the lot because he can do things down the racetrack. He has just a magic quality with that throttle foot to keep those tires from spinning.
Yeah, you'll very seldom see Hawley get the car sideways, have to go up and smoke, red light it, and do all the mistakes that can you do in one of these things.
But right now he's behind Tom McEwen and not catching up. It is Tom McEwen enjoying his finest season of performance in a long time. 592 for the Mongoose at 249 miles an hour. He can go quicker than that, I think.
Well, that was just a case of Tom McEwen using raw horsepower and good traction to drive away from Hawley. As you can see, Hawley ran well, but McEwen ran better to beat the world champion with that beautiful new red Corvette of his.
And as always at the Spring Nationals, a huge crowd enjoying the finest drag racing possible, and it appears that maybe Halloween has come early to Central Ohio. We'll be back.
You think you're having fun? How about these folks here at Columbus, Ohio? They dressed up real pretty to come out and watch the drag races as we get ready for more funny car action.
And here is the giant killer, Sherm Gunn of Azusa, California, who knocked off Kenny Bernstein in round number 1 with his 6-year-old race car. Now Sherman is up against the blue car. From Dallas, Texas, Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max. There is no more popular funny car in the drag racing sport. Now, all of these drivers know Sherm Gunn very well because most of them are customers at his California race car shop. Sherm specializes in building the interior aluminum for these cars, and Raymond Beadle won't have anyone else do his 10, as they call it, because he feels that Sherm's is the best at keeping the fire off your body.
And that is mighty important in one of these things. As we said, the engine right up front, it's practically in your lap, and these things have been known to go up like giant firecrackers if you feed too much fuel to them.
Raymond Beadle with the emergency hatch open. There's no problem with the car other than that it's darned hot inside, and the only way you get a little ventilation, in fact, they do carry air conditioning, Brock. All you do is open that escape hatch.
I stand corrected. In fact, Sherm Gunn's got his window down, too, so he's going to stay nice and cool.
Well, Sherm doesn't have the latest in aerodynamics. You talked earlier about the pungent aroma of nitromethane fuel, Brock. That could be a problem for the drivers were it not for some very special equipment in the helmet area. Whoa! The nitro fumes can get pretty intense, even in the pit area when they're just warming up the cars. And you know, back in the early 50s, the first fellow to run nitro was a guy named Fran Hernandez. And there was no way Fran could keep it a secret, for obvious reasons. And along about the early 60s, when the drivers were becoming nauseous from the fumes, the breather mask was conceived. A filtered mask made the driver a good deal more comfortable. And even today, Raymond Beadle still uses this trusty device, along with his old, rather battered, full-coverage helmet. But here right now is the latest technology in helmets. In fact, Mark Oswald of the Candies and Hughes team just got this helmet yesterday.
The breathers are built into it, and it has a fireproof Nomex sock made out of carbon fiber. The entire helmet weighs less than 2 pounds. And also brand new on this helmet is the double layer goggles. In case of fire, this top layer can burn off and still the driver will have some vision with that second layer. You'll see motocross riders even using these helmets today without this sock to filter out the dust and the dirt. So even in the helmet department, the technology marches on.
And so do the race cars. That's the front wheel of Raymond Beetle's Blue Max moving into the staging lights. That is the 84 Camaro of Sherm Guns in the foreground.
Well, it may be an 84 Camaro body, but looking under it is a 1978 race car chassis. Now, Raymond Beetle has an 18-wheeler full of parts and pieces. Not so Sherm Gun. In fact, there's already some smoke coming out of the right bank of Sherm Gun's engine. But Sherm Gun very alert on the lights. The engine's starting to fade for Gun. It is Raymond Beetle all the way. Beetle wins it at a 593, 247 miles per hour. So for Sherm Gun, the day is over, but with some good memories, defeating Bernstein in round one, his best ever effort.
Well, Raymond Beetle goes on as the Blue Max eases to a stop up there at the far end of the racetrack, but we've got another pair. That is the Candies and Hughes car, driven by Mark Oswald, one of the strongest runners in funny car competition. Going up against him is Gary Southern, Glendora, California. Not quite as well known a competitor in this particular kind of competition, Steve.
No, but Gary Southern has driven everything in drag racing, top fuelers, you name it. In his early days, he was a go-kart champion. And I would tell you, Southern is quite an outdoorsman. He is also now a professional bass fisherman, in addition to hunting and all kinds of outdoor activities. Mark Oswald has an awful lot of fans and even family in the grandstand because he's from Cincinnati, Ohio, but spends most of his time these days in Houma, Louisiana, working on the bright red Firebird. This is Gary Southern, Glendora, California. He's got 4 children. In fact, one of the boys is a professional baseball player, a pitcher.
He's got to be mighty proud of that. And a good-looking race car. This is a new tempo-bodied funny car that Gary's brought here to Columbus, and it's really well turned out. Not a whole lot of sponsorship signage along the side of the car. He runs it independently, but he does a good job with it. The car, beautifully turned out, and it's going to have to be to beat the man in the other lane.
Well, a lot of people feel the Candies and Hughes car is the best prepared in funny car racing. And Mark Oswald, very savvy when it comes to track conditions. Earlier, Brock asked him if there were ideal conditions.
Mark, if you had your absolute choice in terms of sea level or altitude, in terms of temperature, time of day, humidity levels, what would you pick? If you could dial in the weather and the location and the geography, inland, on the seacoast, in the mountains, on the deserts, where would you like to run, and exactly what, if you could pick the optimum weather and conditions, what would you choose?
If I wanted to build my optimum racetrack, I'd build it in Death Valley as low as I could get it, and I'd put a big forest all around it so there's a lot of oxygen off the trees. That'd be about the ultimate.
How about temperature?
Oh, I'd say around 50 degrees, 60 degrees in that range. Plenty cool.
Do you like that for the tires or for the engine?
Well, it depends on the racetrack, too. A lot of the racetracks, they like this track here particularly, will get a problem if it gets real hot. They like to be cooler, too. The concrete, you don't really need that heat for the racetrack to be good. And the supercharger heats the air going into the engine so much, the cooler the air going in, the better off you are.
Okay, now you're going to be running in 90-degree temperatures here all weekend. What kind of specific changes will you make in the race car to compensate for that?
It just burns less fuel volume. You have to take a little bit of fuel volume away from it, and you just play with it a little bit, and we can get her there.
Okay, well, good luck. It seems like it's working so far.
Yeah, it is. Good.
Well, Brock, if we think we're hot, imagine Mark Oswald and Gary Southern in 5-layer fire suits. That's like being inside a baked potato.
And a mighty noisy one at that. Plenty uncomfortable in these race cars.
They leave right together, but Gary Southern better have an afterburner if he's going to catch Mark Oswald. Look at that. 585, 243 miles an hour. Mark Oswald advances to the semifinals, where it will be Oswald versus Raymond Beetle in the Blue Max, and Don the Snake Perdue meets his old rival Tom McEwen.
The thermometer's starting to bubble here at Columbus, Ohio, as we get ready for pro stock action. But first, let's go down to the pits to our buddy Ed Bruce.
Pro stock driver Bob Glidden, the winningest driver on the NHRA Tour, has made a habit out of appearing in these final rounds at the Spring Nationals. He's won this event an amazing 5 years in a row. And 6 out of the 7 times he's won the championship when he made it to the final event. Let's go back to last year and watch him as he faced Frank Iaconio in that final run for the championship. Bob in the far lane had been having a tough year up until the Springs. Ranked number 4 in 1982, he faced Frank Iaconio, ranked number 2 in the near lane. Both cars eased into the staging lights, and off the line, it was a very close race. But Glidden puts on the steam and pulls ahead for the victory, running 178 miles per hour, the highest speed for pro stockers at the Springs. In slow motion, we see it was a great start for both cars. But then Glidden poured it on for the win, his 5th consecutive win at the Spring Nationals. I wonder if Bob can do it 6 straight times.
Well, we're about to find out, Ed, because there is Bob Glidden, the red, white, and blue 84 Ford Thunderbird in the far lane. The Pro Stock is the single most expensive car in drag racing to build because of its sophistication. The minimum weight is 2,350 pounds with the driver aboard. They're 500 cubic inches, and nobody does it better than the 5-time world champion from Whiteland, Indiana, Bob Glidden, ably assisted by wife Etta. And here from Winston, Minnesota, with an 84 Pontiac Firebird is Gene Fashing.
Well, these guys are going to go at it. They just run head-to-head. Pro Stock competition is also the tightest in drag racing, Steve. It's never decided by more than a car length.
And the most important part of any Pro Stock drag race is the start. Bob Glidden has red-lighted in the far lane. The 5-year streak comes to an end. Gene Fashing upsets Bob Glidden here in Pro Stock competition. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable it is. And a 792, as we see Bob Glidden roll off the racetrack, he's got to be displeased.
As you watch Bob Glidden and the Christmas tree at the same time, you can see it was a very close red light, but it appeared that Glidden's car was rolling slowly as if possibly the line lock that holds the front brakes was not operating properly.
Well, the first of the big upsets in Pro Stock is Gene Fashing knocks off the favorite, Bob Glidden, with a tremendous run. Trying to get out of the race car. Safety net out of the way. Door open. Hey, how about that? Congratulations. Kind of a surprise. Do you have any idea what happened, Gene?
Bob just staged last and red lighted. That's all I know.
Boy, 5 in a row he had here. You had to go up against him and say, boy, this guy owns this racetrack.
Yeah, I didn't expect to win. Didn't expect to win, but I'm here.
You take it anyway, huh?
Yep, we'll go for the next one.
How's the car running?
I don't know. I don't know what I ran. It didn't run worth a darn on the first pass, but I hope we picked it up a little.
Well, congratulations. See you next round.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good thing that car wasn't on fire, Brock. You'd have been in real trouble. Gene Fashing having a little problem getting out. Okay, it is Pro Stock competition, the next race at hand. And this is a beautiful automobile. Gordy Rivera of Yuma, Arizona. Been Pro Stock racing for a long time, but still looking for that first big win. And he's got one tough customer here at Columbus. This man, the world's fastest Pro Stock driver at over 182 miles an hour, Warren Johnson, heating up the tires on the beautiful silver Oldsmobile. Now, Warren Johnson's career took a giant leap forward when he moved from Minnesota to Duluth, Georgia. They got a lot of stock car science down south, Brock, and it paid off for Warren. Gordy Rivera operates a speed shop in Yuma, Arizona, and the Pro Stock car is just kind of his way of keeping his hand in the business.
Well, he's got his hands full right now with that silver Oldsmobile. That's a big barn door of a race car compared to Gordy Rivera's very streamlined Camaro, but big horsepower on the part of Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile engine.
As they stage, the RPMs come up. Gordy Rivera with a tremendous hole shot. Rivera gambled on the lights and won. Here comes Warren Johnson. No, it is Gordy Rivera with the wind light of his life. He is going to be thrilled to death with a 783 over Warren Johnson's quicker 774. The lanes are timed independently, remember. The clocks don't start till the front wheels move. Gordy Rivera in the near lane. He was a half a car out on Warren Johnson. Warren a little complacent possibly with all of that horsepower that he owns. Now at this point on the racetrack, Warren Johnson running 6 miles an hour faster, but it's still not enough to catch Rivera.
Almost a perfect light for Gordy Rivera. Another big upset here. Gordy, congratulations. Couldn't have done it any better. Caught a perfect light against the big killer. He was running real strong, but not strong enough.
Well, I'm working at it real hard, I tell you.
Car must have ran perfect.
I hope it did. It felt real good.
They told us that you squeezed the light about as good as anybody could do with one of these things.
I was working for it. I knew I had to be ready for him.
Everything's good otherwise?
Everything feels good.
Okay, congratulations. Super race.
Thank you.
Smiling Gordy Rivera reminds me a little bit of another famous athlete, Lee Trevino. Here we continue with Pro Stock competition. In the near lane, the Ewell brothers. Brad Ewell driving at the Spring Nationals. Mark often does. They operate a big performance center in Reno, Nevada. It's been a tough day so far for the Ewell brothers. This is Brad. They exploded a motor in round number 1 and have had to put in their spare power plant to go up against Ken Dondero, Balboa Island, California. Dondero, one of the finest pure drivers we've ever seen in Pro Stock. He drove for Bill Grumpy Jenkins, for Jack Roush in the Ford camp. Took about 5 years off, started a very successful business in Costa Mesa, California, and now he's back driving a car owned by Bob Pinella from Central California. So it's a pair of General Motors products. Firebird in the near lane, Camaro in the far lane, Brock.
Right, Steve, and who's out first? Yes, Brad Ewell. Good hole shot. And is he going to be able to hold off Ken Dondero? Dondero has problems. Brad Ewell takes it 796 as Ken Dondero encountered some kind of mechanical problems and never really was in it.
Well, this is the best performance by the Ewell brothers in a long time as they go into the semifinals with their backup power plant on board. Coming up next, 3-time and current world champion Lee Shepherd, the rear and Morrison Camaro. He will be in the far lane. Now, all the car owners ask Lee Shepherd to do is drive. He does not work on the car between rounds. They prefer that he go over, get in the shade, get a cool drink, and just keep his mind on that starting line and that Christmas tree. 3 world titles for Lee Shepherd. His competition, Sam Giannino, an engine builder from Royal Oak, Michigan, and this is the first time we have seen Giannino this far in competition in a long, long time.
Well, he's got to give it everything. Too much, in fact. A red light for Sam Giannino. That puts him away. It looks like he's going to win the race, but not to be. Lee Shepherd wins it at 777. So with his rivals Glidden and Johnson out, it'll be Shepherd against Gordy Rivera in the semifinal. Gene Fashing, Brad Ewell go against each other in the other race. Well, that does it with Pro Stock for the time being, but let's go back to the pit area. Those hands belong to Raymond Beetle crewman Fred Miller. He is a clutch specialist, and adjusting the clutch on one of these funny cars is one of the most critical components of fast racing. Steve is with Raymond Beetle to reflect on his upcoming race.
Raymond, let me get inside your head just a little bit. You've got a race, Mark Oswald, Candies and Hughes. They can out-tee you on this racetrack. We've seen that all weekend. Do you gamble on another motor setup or go out there and just try to stay close to them and force them into a mistake?
Well, we're going to force them probably to make a mistake. We're going to change our car up a little bit, which we've been changed at the last 2 or 3 rounds. We kind of changed our whole approach today, and we kind of did just the opposite of what we'd been doing the last 2 or 3 days, and the car's picked up 4 or 500s every run. So that time we were a little reluctant and leaning on the motor too much, thinking we might smoke the tires because the track has been kind of touchy for some of the cars. So we are going to lean on the car a little bit, but hopefully he hurt his car pretty good, and we know he's going to have to back it up. He had to change the motors in the first round, so we think we'll stay pretty pat, but hopefully we'll pick up a few hundred.
Good luck, Raymond.
Thank you.
And that's Joe Amato. He's suiting up for semifinal action in the top fuel ranks. We'll be back at Columbus, Ohio for that following this.
Well, the racing has been as hot as the weather here at National Trail Raceway in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Steve Evans along with Ed Bruce and Brock Yates. Brock is right now back in the pit area with Bob Glidden.
Well, if there was a favorite in Pro Stock here at the Spring Nationals, it had to be Bob Glidden. 5 straight championships in this place, and then suddenly a turn of luck that even a veteran like you couldn't imagine happening. Bob, exactly how did it transpire?
Well, we staged with a brake, with an electric solenoid. And apparently when I put the line pressure on and went to stage, the solenoid released and the car rolled through the lights.
And in NHRA drag racing rules, that's it. Goodbye.
We're not allowed any mistakes in this business, and the smallest part can fail and you're still going to be out of action.
Bob, have you ever had this kind of a parts failure before?
I've had a similar thing happen, but in another case, it was our fault. It was a broken wire. You know, we have parts fail occasionally, and we've had a ration of it. Glidden Race Cars has had a ration of it for about a year, but it'll change around.
Well, there's no second chances in this sport. Top Fuel semifinals, a pair of quality cars. The fastest driver in the world, Joe Amato, holds the record at 262 miles an hour. As we said earlier, pioneered this giant, tall wing up there in what Joe calls the clear air. Now, his competition in the far lane will be Gary Ormsby, the winner of this year's Winter Nationals, the low qualifier at the last two races. So, Brock, I think we've got a good chance for this to be a very tight competition.
Well, you sure can't fault the cars or the drivers. As we saw just a few moments ago when talking to Bob Glidden, that you could have a little mechanical failure. But as we watched Joe Amato's wife, Jerry, guide that beautiful maroon race car back into line, we can pretty well count on the fact that these cars are coming to the line with excellent preparation.
Brock, we just got a report from Ronnie Davis on the condition of Doug Krahulis. The hospital says that Krahulis has suffered some severe head injuries, but that the early prognosis is good for a recovery. It's going to be a long road for Doug, but he's going to make it.
Well, that's very, very hopeful and very good news for Doug and all his fans, and I'm sure that that will help take some of the sting out of Shirley Muldowney's loss here earlier today.
Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato accomplishing the very delicate staging maneuver, not wanting to get any deeper into those electronic beams than they have to. It is a beautiful start, but Ormsby goes up in smoke, trying to recover, but that opened the door for Joe Amato. A happy crew there, and well, they should be, as Joe Amato goes into the final round with a 563 at 255 miles an hour. Ormsby losing at 580, 249. As we look at it again, you can see that there really was no advantage to either driver off the starting line. But as they move off the line, the centrifugal action of that clutch starts to hook up and put too much power to Gary Ormsby tires. He just simply overpowered that right-hand lane. And back at the starting line, Gary Beck's crew has already fired that 3,000 horsepower engine for his bye run. Now he gets a gift here in the semifinals because of the Doug Krahulis incident. Krahulis was his scheduled opponent, but he does have an opponent, and that is the clock, because he wants to run quicker than Joe Amato's 563 so that he will have lane choice in that final round over Amato. But it's not totally an automatic victory. Gary Beck has got to stage that car. Should anything go wrong with the engine, the transmission, he could still lose. Right now, back in the pits is Brock with Warren Johnson.
Well, it was a day of giant upsets, as we know, in pro stock, and one of the major players to fall was the top qualifier, Warren Johnson. I think it was a giant surprise, Warren, certainly to everybody in the stands, and I'm probably more so to yourself than anybody.
Well, it's a situation that we were running well enough that you probably tend to be a little bit conservative. So what happened to Glidden wouldn't happen to myself. He red lighted, you know, and obviously he was in the same position I was. He was capable of winning the race just as well as Shepard is going to probably win this race. And you probably tend to be a little bit conservative, and the other guy's got nothing to lose. He's going to gamble, and this time he won. He'll try it next time, probably lose. You know, it's one of those things that what makes the sport a little bit exciting.
Well, that's why you see a lot of underdogs squeeze the light and red light so much, I suppose. But in this particular case, he squeezed it about as good as anybody could do. It was almost an impossible light, really.
Well, he took a pure guess at it, and he come out looking like a hero. If it had gone the other way, he had no choice but to do it. So either event, he can't lose, you know. So unfortunately, I lost.
And with a quicker elapsed time did he lose. This is Gary Beck, and quick elapsed times are his specialty. The mark he's shooting for right now is anything quicker than a 563 as he accomplishes what the racers call the dry hop. That's that little second burnout that heats up the clutch and gives the driver some idea of the traction qualities of the racetrack. Starter Buster Couch. He's been out there for the National Hot Rod Association over 20 years. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, and always has his eyes on those race cars, looking for anything that might be leaking out of the engine that could cause a potentially dangerous situation. Buster's made a lot of life and death decisions on that starting line over the years, Brock.
He has indeed, and he's flagged a lot of guys off if they've been late staging, and he's gotten some people hot. But once Buster says that's it, that's it.
Yep, there's no appeal there, but look at Gary Beck. He is flying. Gary Beck, the shootout. Is there any doubt about lane choice? 549 at 258 miles an hour. That is top speed of the event for Gary Beck. He will race Joe Amato in the final round of Top Fuel.
All right, that is a funny car. This is Columbus, Ohio, the Spring Nationals, and that automobile belongs to one of the great veterans in this sport, Don Prudhomme. He is going to go up against this man, Tom McEwen, and between them, they've got over 40 years of big league drag racing experience. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk to Don about that endless rivalry with Tom McEwen.
Been doing this a long time, this jungle warfare, the snake and the mongoose. He's got a lane choice here, but not a big advantage, I don't think.
Well, no, he's been running pretty consistent, and you know, we run a little quicker earlier in the rounds, and we had some trouble last round, which of course gave him lane choice. But depends on that left lane is. You know, I still think we can do a pretty good job over there.
He likes that lane choice. He says, I like the feeling of power it gives me to tell him where to go.
Yeah, yeah, he does. Of course, I like that too, you know. But it'll be a fun race. And if we get off to a good start together and we don't have any trouble getting the tires just and so on, I think we can put him away.
This is so much of a guessing game. The car goes a little slower that round. You come back here with your mechanic, Bob Moran, and you really start guessing a lot.
You really do. You guess way before you get back to the pit, Steve. You know, you guess, you know, as the thing was going into high gear, I knew what was wrong with it, and you know, had to make some quick decisions on what to do on our way back to the pit. So we discuss things like that in the tow vehicle, and we get back here, we pretty much know what to do.
Well, we look forward to watching anytime you and Tom get together. It's always fun.
It'll be a good race.
It sure will be. Whenever you hook a pair of superstars up like this, you know it's going to be hot. It'll be interesting to see whether the combination that Prudhomme chose after his last race will work, because this racetrack is getting mighty slick, Steve.
And Don Prudhomme absolutely hates to lose to Tom McEwen. He hates to lose, period. But to McEwen, that just breaks his back.
Well, you know that McEwen has got the good lane here, and that might spell the difference in this particular race.
Oh, McEwen is going to the starting line with all the confidence in the world. In the win-loss column, Prudhomme has won far more than McEwen over the years, but this one is going to belong to the mongoose. Don Prudhomme, too much tire smoke. Tom McEwen on to one of his best runs ever, a 587 at 251 miles an hour. The goose is tough today.
He sure is. As we see Don Prudhomme coasting down the racetrack, he doesn't even pop the chute on that one. That was a disastrous run right from the time he dropped the clutch.
And now all he can hope is that McEwen doesn't stop by his trailer and nag him about it.
Well, there you see Don Prudhomme just immediately lighting up those tires, and from there on in, it was all McEwen.
Don Prudhomme doing a lot of steering in all of that tire smoke. Some kind of race car driver.
That was probably a clutch setup that just didn't work.
Exactly. An awful lot of times you'll try to make horsepower with the clutch. In other words, put more horsepower to the rear tires instead of building it in the engine. And when you try to do that, it's a calculated risk.
Well, let's see how it works with this man's adjustments. That's Fred Miller. We saw him working on Raymond Beadle's clutch a little bit earlier. That, of course, is a critical adjustment, and it will only be a matter of seconds before Raymond Beadle finds out how Fred Miller did with his clutch.
And their opponent will be Mark Oswald, who has that favored right-hand lane. Right now doing his burnout in the red Pontiac Firebird. You'll remember, Brock, years ago in drag racing, you smoked the tires intentionally. That's just the way it was, all the way to the finish line sometimes. And along came what they call the slider clutch. The clutch actually slips. You can adjust the amount of slippage so that the excess horsepower goes up in clutch dust instead of tire smoke.
Exactly. It used to be the object just to hook that clutch up as tight as possible and eliminate slippage. But now that the science has come into the game, the clutch becomes as important as gear ratio used to be, or all kinds of tire pressures and all kinds of other components. The clutch is a critical component now.
And these are 3-disc clutches. You have one disc in a passenger car. Well, there's 3 of them inside a funny car clutch, and it's kind of like a hydromatic in some ways. You just step on the pedal and it goes.
Exactly. And remember, too, in the old days, it used to be direct drive. You just put them in gear and go. But now there is a gear change about halfway down the racetrack in a funny car, and in a Top Fuel dragster as well.
That's right. It's just a matter of pushing a button or pulling a lever, depending on the setup. You don't have to depress the clutch like you would in a street car.
Well, again, it's a question of so much real surplus horsepower. I mean, we talk about 2,500, 3,000. Nobody really knows, but we do know this. There's more than you need.
Well, more than you need at the starting line, but you need every bit of it at the other end of the racetrack. So many times, it's one down there. We're ready. Mark Oswald, Raymond Beadle leave right together. Oswald starts to pull out with an advantage. It is Mark Oswald going into the final round at 589, 242 miles an hour. And that 589 means Tom McEwen will have lane choice with his quicker 587.
So as Mark Oswald coasts to a stop, let's take another look at that race. Pretty even off the line. Raymond Beadle going head for head with Mark Oswald. It looks like maybe Beadle's got a little bit of an edge at this point, but at the far end of the racetrack, it's Mark Oswald with big horsepower to go on to take that victory. So Mark Oswald into the finals.
Well, Mark, you got a little lucky there. Beadle was closing fast.
Yeah, it was close. I wanted to drive in the chute. I had a little trouble getting stopped the last 2 times.
Yeah, it looked like you shut off before he did.
Yeah, I clicked it a little early. We've been kind of wounding the motor a little bit, and I want to save it as much as possible. I felt that I was ahead, so I clicked it.
We just learned that you've lost lane choice by 0.02 of a second to Tom McEwen in the final.
Well, it's not too big a deal. This racetrack's held up real good. I think we can make a good run in the left lane.
All right, go get him.
Plenty relaxed young man, total professional. Mark Oswald, he'll go against one of the real veterans, Tom McEwen. All right, let's go back. Pro Stock semifinals. That is Yule versus Fashing. Really no favorite in this one, I wouldn't think, Steve.
No, not particularly. One thing we know for sure, no matter which driver wins, we have a surprise final round contestant. Neither is generally expected to go that far.
Yeah, but let's not forget we've lost a couple of the big names. We've lost Bob Glidden, we lost Warren Johnson, and who's to know? This could be a day of big upsets in Pro Stock.
Well, Gene Fashing won his race with a hole shot, as you remember. He may be trying that again on the Yule brothers. Beautiful automobile for Brad Yule, one of the cleanest Pro Stocks anywhere. Engine RPM's up. Gene Fashing has red lighted. It looked like the car just kind of lunged through the beams before he let the clutch out. This is Brad Yule going into the final round at a 795, 173 miles an hour with his backup engine. Not bad at all.
Boy, the Yule brothers have got to be happy. There's some celebrations going on in Reno right now, but unfortunately for Gene Fashing, it's over much too early. Matter of a few feet, and it was decided when he went through the beam and clicked on the old red light.
Well, Brad Yule is going to race one of these two gentlemen. Either Gordy Rivera, who had the whole shot of the weekend in the earlier round, up against Lee Shepard, the world champion. You see Gordy Rivera moving those levers. Unlike a street transmission where you have a single stick, in a Pro Stocker, you got a stick for each gear.
And you just keep yanking them back as you go down the racetrack. 4 speeds through the quarter mile.
This will be a very interesting start. Warren Johnson, when he talked to you earlier, Brock, said Gordy Rivera is flat guessing on the lights. Well, if he guessed against Warren Johnson, you know he's got to guess against Lee Shepard because he's down a full 10th in the elapsed time department. Shepard in the far lane, Yuma, Arizona's Gordy Rivera in the near lane, taking their time moving in. Shepard breaks first, stages. Now Rivera is in. Buster Counts watches. Gordy Rivera guessed again, only not successfully this time. A red light in the near lane. It'll be Lee Shepard going up against Brad Yule in the Pro Stock final.
Well, Gordy Rivera had no choice but to try it and gamble against Lee Shepard. It didn't pay off, so Lee goes on to the finals against Brad Yule here at the Spring Nationals.
16 Pro Stocks qualified here at the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio. Only 2 remain. This is the final round. It will pit Lee Shepard, the 3-time world champion in his white Camaro from Texas, against this glistening Pontiac Firebird from Reno, Nevada, with Brad Yule at the wheel. Shepard looking over, checking out the location of the Yule brothers automobile. You know, Brock, the Yule brothers, I've never seen brothers any closer. They race together, they party together, they're in business together, inseparable guys.
They sure are. They share the defeats, they share the losses, and they share the expenses. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with Brad.
Brad Yule, another one of those perfect days at the races. You break a motor first round, have to change engines, put in, what, a 3-year-old motor, and here you are in the final?
Well, we feel good about it, Steve. We just, all weekend long, we just can't get down the track, can't get down the track. Now we feel pretty good. I've been driving well. A lot of other people have just failed to drive well.
I don't know if you're superstitious at all, but did you realize that Lee Shepard has never won this race? It's the only one he's never won.
Well, to beat someone, that's a man you absolutely have to beat. Everything is in his court right now. He's the one that has to make the mistake. He's got the horsepower. We just Gonna hope we leave on time and make a good race out of it.
So often in Pro Stock the last year or so, we see red lights in this kind of a situation where one guy's a tenth or two off. Are you liable to do that?
I might red light, but I hope I don't. We want to make a good race out of it. I want to get the start line, the finish line, hope the mistake is in Lee's lane.
There's nothing worse than red lighting, gambling on the lights, and seeing the other guy break a transmission.
That happens all the time. In the second round, it happened against Don Darrow. Me and Don Darrow, he was right alongside of me, and he shut it off. He broke something.
Well, I know both of you guys drive. Mark, step in here for just a second. Do you wish you were in the cockpit in this final round now?
Oh yeah, heck yeah, I wish I was in the cockpit, but that doesn't bother me. I'm real proud of the job that Brad's done, and it's an opportunity that we took advantage of. Really, we've been in the semifinals 7 different times now, never been in the finals, so we need a little luck. And Brad did his job, and here we are.
And here we are, just about ready to find out who's going to do it against Lee Shepard in that beautiful white Camaro and that marvelous-looking Pontiac Trans Am of the Yule brothers, Steve.
I got the feeling, talking to Brad, he wasn't going to take a Gordy Rivera type of a gamble. He hoped to have a green light, and he does. But if Lee Shepard is going to make a mistake, it's going to have to be in the next 2 seconds because he's got a big, big lead. It is Lee Shepard for the first time ever winning the Spring Nationals. The Rear and Morrison crew looking down the track like it's just kind of another day at the office. But for Mark Ewell, a thumbs up to his brother, even though he can't see it. He's proud of what he did today.
And he should be, because Brad Ewell did a fine job. He did not red light, he drove well, but he was just outpowered. You wonder whether or not Lee Shepard would have had as easy a time of it if the Ewell brothers hadn't had to go to that old tired backup motor. But no matter, it's over with now. Lee Shepard, the new champion here at the Spring Nationals, his first victory, and he is with Steve Evans.
Lee Shepard was beginning to believe he was jinxed at Columbus, Ohio. Congratulations, your first ever Spring Nationals win.
Well, thanks, Steve. It really feels good. Yeah, things hadn't been looking too good the last few years, and we finally pulled it off.
Not here anyway, but everywhere else they've certainly been good.
Yeah, we've had a real good season so far.
In fact, you've got a huge points lead now. Brad Ewell was not about to red light, as so many do against you. I think he thought he'd take his chances the whole quarter mile.
Well, that's usually the smartest thing to do, I think. Looked like we both left pretty close together, and it was a good race.
It certainly was a good race, and congratulations again. Lee Shepard moving on towards what will undoubtedly be his 3rd World Championship.
And our congratulations as well, Lee. Job well done. All right, funny car finals. That is Mark Oswald in the Candies and Hughes Trans Am. Against him, the old pro, the mongoose, Tom McEwen. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think that Tom McEwen has more confidence today than I have seen in a long, long time, since maybe the late 70s. He's got the performance. His driving has never been better. He's got lane choice. Everything is in his court. Mark Oswald, well, he was about 13 years old when Tom McEwen first started drag racing. It is Mark Oswald all the way. Tom McEwen loses traction, even though he had the favored lane. Oswald, one of the few cars to really quickly get down the near lane at 590, 251 miles an hour. And a popular victory for the Ohio native.
Absolutely. Lots of Mark Oswald fans here as we take one more look at a race that turned out to be over in a matter of feet. Oswald on the left side. There goes Tom McEwen boiling his tires. He quits immediately. Mark Oswald goes on to victory.
So Mark Oswald avenges a final round loss here a year ago to Raymond Beadle to pick up his 3rd NHRA title. One of only 2 drivers to have ever won NHRA national events in Top Fuel and Funny Car, Don Prudhomme being the other one. Congratulations, Spring Nationals champion.
Thank you, Steve. I didn't think we'd ever get one this year.
I don't know what happened to McEwen, but he was out of it early.
Yeah, I don't know. I never really saw him at all. I don't know if he had a problem smoking the tires or what.
Well, it looks like you went up a little conservative, a 590 elapsed time. Carno Paul Candies giving the high five to Mark. How did you set it up?
Well, we just tried to get down the track again. We've been trying to compensate in the final rounds, and we've been losing. You know, we've been trying to keep making it go quicker, and we decided to just go with it the same and try to win the race.
And you have certainly now matured as a funny car driver. No one can call this kid a rookie anymore. Paul Candies, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Fine young man here.
My guys did a great job. Best team in drag racing. It doesn't get any better than this.
Well, it certainly doesn't. They also leave here with the lead towards a potential world championship.
And now, one more race. Beck versus Amato, the Top Fuel Championship here at the Spring Nationals.
The world world's fastest top fuel driver, Joe Amato. He will race in the final round at the Spring Nationals, the world's quickest top fuel driver, Gary Beck. What a matchup, Brock Yates.
It's going to be mighty interesting, Steve. As you said, Gary Beck, the lowest ET in history, over there in that beautiful white dragster against Joe Amato, 262 miles an hour. We saw him do it at the Gator Nationals earlier. Boy, oh boy, you just wonder whether or not it's going to be Beck the first half of the track and Amato the last half of the track.
And Amato has served notice to Gary Beck that number 1 on his car is definitely not secure for next season. Amato had set his sights on the world title and makes no bones about telling Gary.
Well, it seems as if he shifted everybody's balance of power when he showed up at Gainesville with that big high wing raked way back, and now a lot of other guys have gone to it. Beck, not quite as radical a setup, though, wing-wise.
About 2 years ago is when Gary Beck first came up with his big advantage, and it was in the fuel system. He spent countless hours on a flow bench working it out, a 2-stage system, as we see Jerry Amato smiling as she backs up Joe. Anyway, back to that fuel system thing. Beck was able to keep that a secret for a long time, but now the cat is out of the bag, obviously. Joe Amato, some of the other drivers and crew chiefs starting to figure out what Beck has known for so long.
There are no secrets in any kind of motor racing. It just gets around. These guys are much too sharp. Watching the other guy, and there's a little bit of copycat in every kind of racing, and it sure happened here. Gary Beck had an advantage, and now we're going to start to see big wings, and I think an emphasis on aerodynamics now that Joe's gotten the big speeds.
Well, Beck says with the right aerodynamics that a top fuel dragster could go 300 miles an hour. Think about that. You won't see any game split on the starting line between these two guys. They're good, clean drivers. Both are pre-staged. Let's see who moves in first. Neither driver wanting to move in first. Gary Beck finally does. Amato follows. We are just seconds away from the final race of the Spring National. They leave right together, but Gary Beck starts to stretch it out. Gary Beck wins the Spring Nationals. His crew, obviously delirious. Gary did it with a 5:54 at 2:57.
Well, he's been running in the 550s all day long, and I'm sure Joe Amato knew it was going to take that kind of an ED to beat him. It was not to be, though, as Gary Beck really had it all in hand. All those months at the flow bench working on engine efficiency pay off in situations like this. And right here, he presses what's called the high-speed button, leans out the motor for a rocket-fast finish, maximum horsepower as he crosses the line, a winner here at Columbus.
So Gary Beck makes it 2 big wins in a row. The Cajun Nationals just a few weeks ago, and now the Spring Nationals again for Gary Beck. Congratulations, my friend.
Well, thank you, Steve. Geez, it's a tough race. You know, anytime you race Joe Amato, it's a handful, and real happy to win, and that's for sure.
Well, even if he can't win, he seems to hang around a few more rounds than you'd like.
Oh, yeah, no, they got a great race team over there, and super guys, and certainly we're real happy for all the Light All-Stars and be able to get her in the winner's circle 2 times in a row.
And you just hold your breath all the way down the racetrack, hoping those tires stay stuck.
That's it. I saw some wheels over there right off the starting line, and then I wrung her out a little bit in low gear, and they went away. I was real happy to see that.
Well, here comes the station wagon full of some big, burly guys from Hemet, California, and they are mighty happy.
As well they should be. Their man wins it. Top fuel victor here, Gary Beck. Our congratulations to him, to Mark Oswald in Funny Car, and to Lee Shepard for another Pro Stock victory. All right, you thought it was all over? How about this? That's Roger Gustin turning up the wick on his jet-powered Funny Car. They hang around to watch this one, Steve.
And look at him holding onto the Christmas tree so that Gustin doesn't blow it into Indiana somewhere. They have a manual afterburner, putting on a show, smoke and fire, the weenie roasters of drag racing. You got to see these things at night to believe them.
Well, this motor is right out of a jet aircraft, and it'll blast this car down the strip at record speeds. As it turns out, though, he's not in a recognized class. This is purely for show. Roger Gustin practically blows them out of the grandstands to cap a highly competitive day here at the National Trails Dragway in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Brock Yates, along with Steve Evans and Ed Bruce. Thanks for joining us at the Spring Nationals.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team, the nation's premier source of fast lane fashion. Style Auto, the champion's choice for the style of your life. The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.